good morning to everyone. First and foremost, I would like to thank Forestpin for having us here today. It's an honor and a privilege to be amongst you today. Alright, so what happened is I will first take you through an overview of what is fraud. I'm sure everyone already knows what is fraud, but just to break it down into white-collar, blue-collar crimes, what does financial statement fraud consists, corruption, and also asset misappropriation. Alright, so crime. Crime is a word where we all try to avoid most of the time. And as we all know, crime is a deviant behavior against the law, right? So being a deviant behavior against the law, there are two legal elements that always prove crime, which is actus rea and mens rea. Mens rea meaning intent, actus rea meaning the action. You cannot commit a crime without the intent of committing it. That would be an accident, right? And when we talk about crime now, we have two fields of crime. One will be white collar, another will be blue collar. Blue collar crime is physical crime in nature, right? We can see it happening. We can see things like rape has taken place or murder, daylight robbery. Those things will come under blue collar crime, right? Then white collar crime is what we want to focus on today, where the big bucks are, where people don't see what you're doing, but causes much more, impact to the society than anyone ever can imagine. Right? So as Sutherland has put it through, crime committed by a person of respectability and social status. Basically, we can put white-collar crime into an occupational crime. Crime committed in the process of your occupation, in your position of power. And blue-collar crime is physical in nature. Of course, one will be the highest status and second will be the lower. So when we talk about fraud, fraud will be part of the white-collar crime, white-collar criminality, right? So fraud, being the definition provided by our Association of Certified Fraud Examiners, there are four main elements when we talk about fraud. The first thing is intent. Mens rea, you need intent to be there all the time. The first thing you have to prove in court is intent. Intent followed by misrepresentation or the action, actus rea, right? So intent, misrepresentation, damages, and of course if there's damages, there's a victim, and it's most of the time done for personal gain. And not to be confused, personal gain is not only the gain of a person to make some money on the side, but also could be at times collusion between the board or between management for the sake of the company. For instance, bribing a certain government official so that the company gets a contract so they can move forward and survive the business cycle, right? And breaking down fraud, the word fraud, we have three main categories that's been highlighted by the Association of Certified Fraud Examiners. With advancement of technology, with things moving forward, with cybercrime being one of the top crimes now, but everything falls down into these three categories. The modus operandi might be different, but the scheme stays the same. So it's best for us to know what are the schemes that could take place and put in the proper controls to mitigate the risk. We can never eliminate the risk of fraud. We can mitigate those risks. And to mitigate those risks, first thing we have to understand what are the schemes that are taking place. What are the most famous schemes? What are those that are higher significance, higher impact before we can even plan our internal controls, right? So corruption, asset misappropriation, and financial statement fraud. Corruption is basic, it's easy, it's giving or receiving something of value in order to influence a person's decision, right? So for instance, like I said earlier, paying off a government official to get a contract, which it's against the law. And below, when we talk about below corruption, we have a few other things like conflicts of interest. When it's not declared to the board, they are related party transactions. Maybe illegal gratuities, thanking someone illegally when you get a contract. Followed by that, we have asset misappropriation, which can be basically broken down into cash and non-cash. Either stealing cash, skimming cash, or either misusing company assets. This could be from machinery to your basic laptops or your phones, right? Following that, we have financial statement fraud. Financial statement fraud is one that we are all going to focus on today, actually. The most important one when it comes to the board, right? Making sure the integrity of the financial statements that are put out there are of high value. So when we talk about financial statement fraud, is of course the misrepresentation, omission, or even concealment of financial statement items from your reports to your financial statement users, right? So material information is actually disoriented. Material information that's actually omitted from financial statements, right? So before we move forward, and I hope I'm not boring you. So we have a short, another quiz, one question quiz, or two question quiz actually. So basically what we want to know here is, when considering the number of instances of occupational fraud, we have the three categories, right? Corruption, asset misappropriation, and financial statement fraud. So which do you think would be the highest number of occurrences according to our global survey this year? So probably you can start the polling. It's either A, B, C, or D. So when considering the number of occurrences of occupational fraud, which would be the most common, which would be the most higher frequency? Well, we have 8 who answered. Most common is financial statement fraud, least common being asset misappropriation. But the correct answer would be, most common is asset misappropriation. Why? Asset misappropriation can come from anything. From, like I said earlier, using your laptop, stealing laptops or stealing phones, to misusing company machinery, to blatant embezzlement of funds. It encompasses so many schemes at once. And it's the most common, and it's done by the lower levels mostly. It's done by the front desk up to middle management, and less frequently done by the board directors colluding with management, like how financial statement fraud is. Right? So following that, let's have another question before we go into the details. Now we consider the median loss. Which category of schemes do you think that contributes to the highest median of loss in our global survey? So, looking into the median loss, the highest median loss contributing to, whole loss to fraud. Well, we have most saying financial statement fraud is the highest of impact, highest of losses is caused through financial statement fraud, and lowest being asset misappropriation. The answer is, of course, when you manipulate your finances in your financial statements, it causes massive impact compared to just embezzlement of funds from client accounts. You know what I'm saying? Or even corruption. Corruption is always in the middle. It's never at the highest or the lowest levels. Here it is. Here's the findings by our 2018 occupational report on occupational fraud and abuse. We have reported that asset misappropriation is of highest of frequency but lowest of value, while financial statement fraud is highest of value but probably lowest in frequency. Even though we see unraveling of many financial statement fraud cases of corporate scandals that are going on throughout the world, right, globally, but still, it is lowest of occurrences but highest of value, one that must be looked at board level at least. In the reality of fraud, so when we examined 2,960 cases throughout the report to the nations by the ACFE, we have found that while 55% is less than 200,000, the big chunk of 22% is 1 million and more. When it comes to financial statement fraud, it's not going to be 5,000, 10,000, 50,000, it's going to be millions. And it goes to hundreds of millions at times. Right? So that's why after this, when my colleague presents, Dr. Ravindra presents, he will actually emphasize what the importance of fraud risk management, the agenda of fraud risk management in board discussions. Why is it so important to put it up there? And of course, most of the time, these schemes or these categories of fraud do not come by its own. When a company's culture is such, when it does not have the tone at the top, it does not have proper internal controls, we have asset misappropriation, sometimes mixing in with corruption. We have corruption mixing in with financial statement fraud, and of course, collusion between different parties in the company. And to give you more on the insights of the schemes that are happening and more stats, we have actually put in brochures or short findings in your files, in your folders, right? Please take that back, analyze them, and have discussion about it. Lastly, before I end, I would like to just highlight the median loss, because of course we can do much more with fraud in a private company compared to a public company, right? So we have shown that private company is much higher compared to the public companies, government, and non-profits. One thing is we have to highlight here is non-profit is actually, fraud going on in non-profits actually on the rise, because people don't check. They believe that non-profits are fighting for a cause, but when it comes to fraud, non-profit is on the rise compared to the others. All right. So thank you very much for this. Is just the insights into the report. I will pass it back to my colleague, Dr. Ravindra, to take it from here. Thank you.